People have, quite naturally, asked me about, well, can you do other games in this map size comparison thing, Dema? So, yeah, here we go with some other games. We've got Afterimage in the top right hand corner, exactly as we saw in the previous video. We've got Silksong in the bottom left corner, exactly as we saw in the previous video. These are scaled to the character height. And people have asked about Aeterna Noctis, obviously, because it's big. Grime, because that's also a reasonably sizable game. And just for comparison, somebody asked, well, can you do Super Metroid as well? See what that looks like. So we've got all three there. And this is... It's reasonably accurately done, but I've squished it all down so it fits on one screen so I don't need to zoom in and out. And based on this, you can see that the Aeterna Noctis looks absolutely massive. I did the same thing with Aeterna Noctis that I did with Afterimage, in the sense that I moved all the rooms around to make it more of a dense image, because otherwise it would just stretch all the way along the bottom of the screen and everything else would look really small in comparison, because it's just one of those games in how it's laid out. It's worse than Afterimage, realistically. But this does highlight some weird discrepancies, because realistically, Silksong doesn't feel that much smaller than Aeterna Noctis. Aeterna Noctis is a game with a really small character sprite, and also it zooms the camera in and out quite a lot, so it's really difficult, especially for example when you are in the space area, Cosmos. It's quite difficult to really ascertain the scale, because the camera moves around quite a lot, which it doesn't do in Afterimage, Silksong, Super Metroid, or even Grime very much, I don't think. So whilst when I was working on the previous video I thought, oh, character height seems like a reasonably sensible way of doing it, actually it's really not. What I needed to do was think about the zoom and the scale. So I went back to the other option, which was scaling the different maps around the room height, i.e. how much fits onto the screen at any given moment. And that was pretty easy with Super Metroid, because obviously it's a room-based, grid-based game. Afterimage I'd already done, Silksong I'd already done. I just needed to do the new three. So if we take a... this might surprise you. I hate that phrase. This might surprise you. What I found might surprise you. Sounds like clickbait, doesn't it? And... boom! There we go. So scaled for... room height, room scale, camera scale, whatever you want to call it, you can see that there's actually a reasonable amount of difference. Grime shrinks a little bit. Aeterna Noctis shrinks a lot, which shows you how small the character is, sprite-wise, in that game. And Super Metroid grows quite substantially. And I think that is a fairer representation of how big these game worlds actually are. And you can see that Silksong and Aeterna Noctis are actually roughly, and I do mean roughly, similar in terms of general size. The thing you need to remember though about Aeterna Noctis is that it's a very spaced out, no pun intended, game. There's a lot of just kind of nebulous platforming. Don't get me wrong, there's also a load of complex maze-like rooms. But yeah, it's a weird one. If you just compare the two of those, they're roughly similar, and Afterimage is ever so slightly bigger. There's not a lot in it. I personally was kind of surprised, and I just used my actual map for this. I didn't go through and pull out the pieces because I was too lazy. I was surprised at how quote unquote small Grime feels in comparison, and I was reasonably impressed with the size of Super Metroid in comparison to something like Silksong. This is actually the second time I've recorded this video because I realised that I'd actually screwed up the scaling of the Super Metroid map, so I got it at smaller than it should have been, and it was talking to a couple of people that made me realise that I'd messed it up. So there we go. That, I think, is a reasonably fair, I'm not going to say close, but a reasonably fair estimation of the scale and size of these worlds. Now, if I was able to condense Afterimage further, take away some of this space, then I think it would probably bring it closer to Aeterna Noctis. I took individual rooms and managed to slot them into places in Aeterna Noctis. Couldn't do that with Afterimage because it's the wrong kind of map. In Afterimage, this purple zone is all one graphic. This red zone is all one graphic. Whereas in Aeterna Noctis, this room, 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 they're all separate graphics. So I can literally take rooms and move them around to where I want. Could I do that with Afterimage? Yeah, but it would involve a lot of cutting and pasting and work, and it's just not worth it for something that is only a vaguely academically interesting question. But I think that, yes, if I was able to condense Afterimage just a little bit more and kind of cut out some of this space, then all three games would be of a roughly similar size. But that doesn't change how they feel to get around in terms of scale. And I didn't do the 10-second thing for this because I didn't want to reinstall half a dozen games again. So this is what you've got. Those of you who were interested, well, how big is Aeterna Noctis compared to this? If you want to compare it based purely on character size, Aeterna Noctis is massive because the character's really small on the screen. But as I said, I think this is a much fairer and a much more accurate representation of how much fits on a screen at once, and therefore gives you that sense of scale. Obviously, the characters are going to move at different speeds through these worlds. Silksong, Hornet with the dash, is incredibly fast in comparison to the other four games here. Samus is very slow, realistically speaking, and it's got that horrible floaty jump that I really, really dislike. The King of Darkness in Aeterna Noctis is also really quite slow. Your character in Grime, yeah, it's not too bad. Depends on how you play. So that's... Even with the maps scaled like this, the feeling that you get of getting around and how fast it is to get around is very much going to impact your sense of scale of the world. Of these 5 games, Silksong has by far the fastest and most fluid movements. And therefore, even though it is a substantial game, it's not really any different in scale from Aeterna Noctis, but getting around Aeterna Noctis for me was very much a slog. I know a lot of people like the movements in Aeterna Noctis, especially the teleporting hour and so on and so forth, and that does speed up movement a lot, but it doesn't have that kind of just hold down a button and moveness that Silksong does. I hope that's interesting for people. As I said in the previous video, this isn't scientific, it's not mathematical, it's just me counting pixels and trying to scale things so that they are very roughly of a similar size, scale, scope, whatever you want to call it. As I said in the last video, if anybody's got a better way of doing this, let me know. And thanks for watching. Cheerio. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, why not click the like button and consider subscribing. Remember, you can ring the bell notification icon to get notified when new videos go live. And until next time, cheerio.